Look at the modern New York City skyline. A global beacon of power, finance, and culture, illuminated by millions of lights against the night sky. Down on the ground, the pace is relentless. Millions of souls move through these concrete canyons every single day in a whirlwind of energy. But New York wasn't always like this. Long before the steel and glass, this land was a pristine wilderness of breathtaking beauty. Crystal clear rivers flowed where avenues now run, and the only sounds were the calls of birds and the rustle of the leaves. For centuries, the Lenape people lived in harmony with this environment, hunting in the forests and fishing in the surrounding bays. Their connection to the land was deep, guided by the seasons and a profound respect for the natural world that provided everything they needed. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, a new age of exploration was dawning. European powers were looking for a northern passage to the riches of Asia. Daring sailors boarded wooden ships, venturing into uncharted waters and facing the immense power of the open sea. Storms battered their hulls and currents tested their resolve, yet they pushed forward into the mystery of the western horizon. In 1609, the explorer Henry Hudson, sailing for the Dutch East India Company, finally reached the mouth of a magnificent harbor. He steered his ship, the Half Moon, up the river that would one day bear his name, marveling at the abundance of the land. This discovery opened the gates for trade. Soon Dutch settlers arrived to establish a permanent presence on the southern tip of Manhattan. They called it New Amsterdam. It was a rugged outpost, centered around the fur trade, where life was difficult but full of potential. To protect their interests, they built Fort Amsterdam. This small fortified settlement became the nucleus of a growing community. Streets were laid out, gardens were planted, and the small village began to resemble a Dutch town, thousands of miles from home. But this small village was about to change history. The seeds of a global metropolis had been planted in the wild soil of the New World. From a quiet wilderness to a bustling trading post, the transformation of New York had begun, setting the stage for centuries of growth. As the years passed, the village grew into a city, the city into a harbor of dreams, and the harbor into the world's capital. The spirit of those early explorers and settlers lives on in every skyscraper and every street of the New York we know today. New York City, a testament to human ambition, starting from a single ship and a dream of a new beginning. In the early 17th century, the course of world history was changed by a single transaction. It wasn't gold that bought the future, but simple trade. This was the island of Manhattan, a lush, untamed wilderness at the mouth of a great river, destined to become the heart of the modern world. The Dutch West India Company sought a strategic foothold. They negotiated a deal for the land, a purchase that remains one of history's most famous legends. Thus, New Amsterdam was born. A small outpost on the edge of a vast continent, it quickly grew into a bustling hub of trade and diversity. The Dutch settlers worked tirelessly. They brought their architecture, their commerce, and their culture to this new, rugged shore, transforming the landscape day by day. At the center of this growing colony was Governor Peter Stuyvesant. A man of iron will, he ruled with a silver-tipped cane and a stern hand. Stuyvesant demanded order and religious conformity, but his rigid ways often clashed with the independent spirit of the settlers who sought a freer life. While internal tensions grew, external threats began to loom. The British Empire looked at the thriving Dutch port with growing envy and strategic desire. Fearing an invasion, Stuyvesant ordered the construction of a massive defensive wall. It was meant to protect the colony's northern border from land-based attacks. This very wall would eventually give its name to the world's most famous financial district, Wall Street. But then, it was just a line in the dirt. In 1664, the threat finally arrived. 4 British warships appeared in the harbor, their cannons leveled at the small town. The demand was simple: surrender. On the decks of these ships, British naval officers stood ready. They represented the power of the Duke of York, prepared to claim this land by force. Governor Stuyvesant wanted to fight, but the settlers, seeing the overwhelming odds, refused to back him. They prioritized their homes and families over colonial pride. Without a single shot being fired, the Dutch agreed to hand over the colony. It was a somber day as the orange, white, and blue flag descended. New Amsterdam was no more. In its place, the British established New York. A new name, a new ruler, and a new era of global influence began. The British flag now flew over the harbor. The deal that changed everything was complete, but the spirit of the city was just beginning to awaken. Though the Dutch left, their legacy lived on in the names of the streets and the resilient character of the people. But a much bigger revolution was coming. In the mid-18th century, a spirit of defiance began to ignite in the cold night air of colonial New York. The city was no longer just a busy trading port. It was becoming the primary stage for an American revolution. When the hated Stamp Act was imposed, the citizens responded with fury, targeting the symbols of royal authority. In the shadows of candlelit rooms, revolutionary leaders met in secret to forge a strategy for an uncertain future. The air was thick with the scent of tallow and the weight of decisions that would soon spark a war. As the conflict neared, ordinary men transformed into soldiers, meticulously preparing their weapons for the coming storm. Every grain of black powder was a gamble for liberty, and every movement was disciplined and purposeful. In August 1776, the horizon erupted. The Battle of Long Island brought the full might of the British Empire to New York shores. The sounds of thunderous artillery echoed across the East River, signaling a desperate struggle for survival. Defeated, but not broken, Washington's troops began a somber retreat, slipping away through the dense, muddy woods. Behind them, the city they fought for fell into the hands of the Crown, beginning a long period of military occupation. Disciplined British redcoats marched through the cobblestone streets, their fixed bayonets gleaming in the cold sun. For 7 years, New York remained a British stronghold, a lonely city isolated from the burgeoning American spirit. But the dream of independence never faded. In 1783, the tide finally turned, and the occupation came to an end. The city erupted in celebration as the Americans returned, reclaiming their home and the promise of a new nation. At Federal Hall, George Washington stood before the people, ready to take the oath as the first president of the United States. With the birth of the government, New York was transformed into the seat of power and a beacon of global potential. Commerce soon followed the flag. Near the site of Federal Hall, a new kind of revolution was quietly beginning. This was the birth of Wall Street, where the foundations of the world's financial capital were laid in the dirt of Manhattan. The energy of rebellion had become the energy of enterprise, fueling a growth that would never stop. As the years passed, the low colonial skyline began to reach higher, reaching toward the modern metropolis it would become. The world was coming to New York, and the journey from colony to global hub was finally complete. The late 19th century saw a tide of humanity unlike any other in history. Huge steam-powered giants emerged from the mist, carrying thousands toward the promise of a new world. For millions of hopeful souls, the long journey ended at the gateway of Ellis Island. It was a chaotic, echoing hall where dreams met the cold, hard reality of inspection and bureaucracy. Beyond the harbor lay Manhattan, a city of infinite noise, vibrant color, and overwhelming energy. The sense of a dozen homelands mingled in the narrow, bustling streets of the immigrant quarters. But the promise of wealth was often hidden behind the shadows of rapid, unchecked urban growth. In the tenements, families lived packed into tiny rooms where fresh air and sunlight rarely reached. Survival in this urban crucible was a daily battle against the elements and crushing poverty. Disease and hardship haunted these corners, testing the resilience of every new arrival's spirit. Then came the roar of disaster, threatening to consume the very heart of the rising metropolis. The Great Fire turned the city into a terrifying spectacle of flame, smoke, and falling embers. In the lawless shadows of the 5 Points, gangs ruled the cobblestone alleyways with iron fists. They carved out desperate territories in a city that was still struggling to find its feet. Social tensions eventually boiled over, turning neighborhoods into chaotic battlegrounds of civil unrest. From Civil War protests to labor strikes, the air was thick with the smoke of painful change. Yet, amidst the concrete and chaos, a grand green sanctuary began to take root. Central Park became the lungs of the city, offering a peaceful respite for the rich and poor alike. As the century turned, a new kind of brilliance began to transform the city's evenings. The dazzling lights of Broadway theaters turned on, signaling the birth of a global entertainment heart. Culture flourished in the glow of the stage, creating a heartbeat that resonated across the ocean. Standing tall above the harbor, the Statue of Liberty remained the ultimate beacon of promise. Her torch lit the way for the weary, promising a future built on the foundations of freedom. From the struggles of the past, a global titan was born, and the city's biggest transformation was just beginning. New York City, a living, breathing organism of concrete and dreams. It is a city defined not by what it is, but what it is becoming. To understand its future, We must look back at the foundations, the moments where the earth first met the sky. The pulse of the city began deep underground. A rhythmic surge of energy that connected the boroughs and fueled a revolution. Above ground, the Brooklyn Bridge rose like a cathedral of steel, bridging the gap between ambition and reality. Workers defied gravity, balancing on iron beams high above the Hudson, stitching together the silhouette of a giant. By the 1920s, the city was electric. Jazz filled the air, and the spirit of New York was one of unbridled optimism. But the heights of the Jazz Age were met with a sudden crashing descent. The world watched as the markets crumbled. The glamour faded into the gloom of the Great Depression. The resilient soul of the city was tested like never before. Yet even in the shadows, the machinery of progress never truly stopped. New York became the arsenal of the world. Ships sailed from the harbor, carrying the hopes of a nation toward distant horizons, marking the city's role on the global stage. Post-war New York emerged as the capital of the world. Diplomacy and modernism found a home on the East River, but progress isn't always polished. The 1970s brought a raw, gritty energy, a period of struggle that birthed new forms of expression. From the subways to the street corners, the city's struggle was written in spray paint and echoed in the sounds of the street. Through every crisis, New York reinvented itself. It found strength in its diversity and power in its refusal to quit. Today, it stands as a testament to human resilience. A vertical forest of glass and steel reaching for the infinite. The skyline is a promise, a reminder that no matter how many times we fall, we rise higher than before. From the cobblestones of the past to the digital horizons of the future, the soul of this city remains unbreakable. New York never stops changing. It is a story still being written by every person who walks its streets. What will it become next? Only the city knows. And the city is always listening.